Hello there, and welcome to Play the Game with Steve. Gambit, Ultimate Deck Building Guide, an Understanding the Mechanics video. Alright, in this series we explore Gambit, Remy LeBeau, and all of his glory. We're going to take a look at his unique abilities. We're going to look through his signature kit and find out all the nice synergies that we can find there and how those cards are going to help us defeat the multiple villains of Marvel Champions. We're then going to take a look at his nemesis. And but most importantly, and the reason why you're watching this video perhaps, is to see how we can find the unique synergies within each aspect that make Remy LeBeau fun to play in the different colors of Marvel Champions. So if you like this video and you're new to the channel, please subscribe, leave some comments. I always appreciate your feedback on the work I try to put out. And on that note, let us begin. So Remy LeBeau has a hand size of 6, 9 hit points, recovery of 3. He is a mutant and a thief. He has an alter ego ability called Thief Extraordinaire. And this action is to thwart. So this will be affected if ever you are confused. This ability will not be able to resolve. You'll exhaust Remy LeBeau and look at the top 2 cards of the encounter deck. You will discard one of those cards and you will remove threat from a scheme equal to the number of boost icons on that card. So that is extremely powerful, and I think is the first thing that people will see is like, oh, this guy is going to be playing off his alter ego side a lot. All right, but what's Remy LeBeau if he is not the Raging Cajun Gambit? The name is Gambit. Remember it. He is a thief and an X-Men. He has a hand size of 5, a thwart of 1, an attack of 2, a defense of 3. He has an ability called Charge the Card. Action, you'll place 1 charge counter here, limits once per round. And then he also has an interrupt called Throw the Card. When you play an attack event, mon ami, you remove up to 3 charge counters from here. And that event deals +1 damage for each counter removed. And this is very important because it is the entire event. Okay, so if there's events that have multiple attacks, because they just clarified this in the rulings, that if you have an attack modifier, it's only on the first instance. Now, where Gambit's Throw the Card ability is special is because this is for the entire event. All right, when you play an attack event. So, and we're going to see, and that event deals +1 damage for each counter removed. So that is going to be very important. We're going to take a look at some of those other synergies here within some of the other cards. All right, so that is for our hero. Very cool. Now let's take a look at his signature card. So the first one is the Thieves Guild. He has a support card, cost 1. It's guild traded, and alter ego response. After you resolve your Thief Extraordinaire, you exhaust the Thieves Guild. You remove 1 threat from a scheme. And if this removes the last threat from that scheme, draw a card. So when I started playing this Gambit, I was playing completely wrong. So I was thinking, look, oh, if I remove the last threat with Gambit, then I draw a card. Wrong. So don't make the same mistake I do. So, and then it doesn't have to be off the same scheme. So if there's a scheme with 1 on it, and then let's say the main scheme has 1, and you do your Thief Extraordinaire on a side scheme, you can still use this off of the main scheme, bring that down to 0, then you'll be able to trigger to draw the extra card. So that is very cool because it gives you a +1 threat removal in alter ego. So yeah, I was playing that wrong when I first started. Then he has a couple of upgrades. The first one is Gambit Staff, 1 cost, item, and a weapon, which is pretty cool because it's a weapon. So we'll see some synergies with that as well. Gambit Staff has a hero interrupt. When an enemy attacks, exhaust Gambit Staff and deal 1 damage to that enemy. So it's pretty cool. So it's an interrupt. So it's when that villain attacks. So if the villain is tough, you can remove the tough using the staff, which I think I like a lot. Then we have the other upgrade that he owns is the Gambit's Guild Armor. 1 cost armor and an item. Hero response. After Gambit defends against an attack and takes no damage, exhaust the guild armor to ready Gambit. So that's pretty cool. Again, he has a 3 defense stat line, which is pretty high. So this gives us some ideas to do some stuff in protection. Maybe try to see if we can do a perfect defense strategy with our Raging Cajun. All right, he's got a couple of cards called Molecular Acceleration. That's his resource card, and that is beauty. Hero Interrupt. When you spend this card, place a charge counter on Gambit. It's a double resource. It gives you a physical and a lightning, and it gives you a charge the card counter. So that is very, very, very nice. 2 copies of that in his deck. Then he has a really cool alter ego. So again, this one you need to be an alter ego to do is Creole Chama. All right, it is a thwart action, alter ego action, thwart. Remove 3 threat from a scheme, and if this removes the last threat from that scheme, confuse the villain. So that is awesome to do it off the main scheme. Now remember, with the new rules, to be able to perform Creole Charmer, there must be at least 1 threat to be removed somewhere on the board, on the villain's board. All right, but getting a free ability to confuse and a thwart action in alter ego, super, super solid. Let's go back to hero form. All right, we have 2 copies of Natural Agility. So again, a cool defense event. It says Hero Interrupt Defense, and it's free when you defend against an attack. So that means you have to be defending either by exhausting your hero or have played a defense event. All right. When you defend against an attack, place 1 charge counter on Gambit. And then for each charge counter on Gambit, you get +1 defense for that attack. Now, just to specify, if you use a defense event and you don't want to defend, so let's say you're using a Defiance card, the plus bonus, yes, you're going to get your charge counter, but you will not get the boost in defense. So that's something you have to do. But if you're using a card like Desperate Defense and your Natural Agility, then yes, you'll be able to use cards like that. But most of the times with Gambit, Natural Agility, you'll just want to defend your hero for that. Then we have one of his most powerful cards, Charged Card. He's got 3 copies of that, and there's a reason for it, because it's his best attack card. Attack superpower, cost of 2, hero action attack, deal 4 damage to an enemy. For this attack, if Gambit's throw the card ability removed at least 1 counter, it's gonna gain ranged. If you remove 2 counter, it gains piercing, and 3 counters, it gains overkill. Don't forget, if you remove 1 counter, it's 5 damage range. 2 counters, 6 damage piercing. 3 counters, 6 damage overkill piercing, 7 damage overkill piercing and ranged. So 2 for 7 is really fun, especially with those very cool keywords of piercing and overkill. So definitely that is his money card for damage. He also has 2 cards called Royal Flush that are attack superpowers. Hero action, place 1 charge counter on Gambit, deal 0 damage to an enemy, deal 0 damage to an enemy, deal 0 damage to an enemy. Now that seems weird, correct? So one thing to be really, it's important to specify. So his place 1 charge counter is going to happen after the interrupt. So you have to use whatever charge counters you have first, and then you place another one once you've decided. Because it's an interrupt, you have to choose which ones you're going to do as you present this or as you pay for the resources to play the Royal Flush. And again, if you have an attack modifier, like warrior skill or a aggressive energy, the aggressive energy is only going to do it off of the first attack. All right. So there you go. So that's that. And then finally we have Sherry Rogue. Rogue as a 4 cost. She has 3 health. She is aerial X-Men. And she has 2 toward 2 attack. And then you reduce the cost to play Rogue by 1 for each charge counter on your identity. And she also has toughness. So that reminds me a lot of Black Widow's Winter Soldier ally with the preparations. So I like that they don't do it too often. But I think with Gambit and Rogue, I think it's cool that she becomes a lot cheaper the more charge counters you have. So there you go. So that's his signature kit. Very, very fun to play. Again, Gambit has a lot of synergies in Alter Ego, has a lot of synergies for increased damage, and has some great synergies also in protection. So he's got ways that are very, very fun to play him in those 3. And again, leadership as well is going to be fun to explore. But before we do that, let's go take a look at his obligation and his nemesis. So his obligation is guild business. So you give to the Remy LeBeau player. So unfortunately, you don't get a free flip. So you will have to go down to Alter Ego on your own as a part of your turn and your flip. You'll have to exhaust LeBeau and spend a lightning resource to remove the guild business from the game. And if you don't, and this I think is the first time we see this, is an obligation with a hazard icon. So that is pretty cool for Gambit. So again, I didn't think Gambit was that powerful, but once you see him, like there's a reason why he gets an increased card, because it's dangerous. It's dangerous. I think the flavor on it is great. All right, if you are like me and you see Shadows of the Past very often, you will see Gambit's ex-wife, Belladonna, the most dangerous of creatures. Belladonna is a minion with 2 scheme, 3 attack. She is an assassin and an elite with 5 health. She has quick strike and toughness. And force response, after Belladonna attacks and defeats a character, place 2 threat on the main scheme. Very, very cool. So this is very nice and dangerous. So no chump blocking the Belladonna. The ex-wife wants, is what the ex-wife wants, the ex-wife will get. So you definitely want to get rid of her as soon as possible. All right, she also comes with the Assassin's Guild, which says, who starts at 4 and has an acceleration icon. Force response, after an assassin minion attacks and defeats a character, place 2 threat here. So again, so not only does she put threat on the main, this thing can also go up. So I like the fact that it only starts at 4. It's nice. All right, so Belladonna is also coming in with a couple of assassins. Guild assassins, I have 1 scheme, 2 attack, the assassin trait, and quick strike with only 2 health. And a force response, after a guild assassin attacks and defeats a character, place a threat on the main scheme. And then finally, the assassination attempt. It is a treachery with a when revealed, each assassin minion attacks you, even in alter ego form. So that is crazy cool. And if there are no assassin minions in play, you search the encounter deck and discard pile for an assassin minion and reveal it. All right, so that is it. So I think as far as obligations and nemesis set, this is extremely on key. I love what they've done with Gambit's kit. For me, hits the mark. Very cool. All right, so what do we think about Gambit? So Gambit, again, he's very versatile, but most I think will focus on the fact that he can remove threat in alter ego and probably pass up on some of these unique opportunities that you have with Gambit. And I really think that the most interesting part of Gambit is not his Creole Charmer or his Thief Extraordinaire, but his throw the card and charge the card ability. That is what I think where Gambit's true strength lies. Yes, it's fun that you can confuse and alter ego and stuff like that, which is it's really strong, but that doesn't win you a game. Gambit has immense destructive capabilities. Now, there's ways that you could play off of his signature cards, like his staff, and you can use the staff, you know, I can use the staff to deal with damage. So that's cool if the enemy is tough. But if you want to include like some mean swings in your deck, I think that's another good option here for Gambit's staff. It's not super reliable, but it doesn't really need to be super reliable. Once you have Gambit's staff and then Gambit's guild armor, you can prevent some damage and ready. You can use the staff to remove a tough, but if the enemy doesn't have a tough, that staff is, instead of 1 damage, turns into 3 damage. So I think it's a good consistent ability that you can use with Gambit, and that's nice. It's a nice little fun combo that you can use for Gambit. But again, it's not my favorite because again, it's not super reliable, but it is something that you can kind of look into and build around if you want to have some fun with some of Gambit's signature cards. But again, I think where Gambit's strength really lies is all his potential to increase damage. So basically, he has in his hero kit on his person the ability to do what aggressive energy can do, what warrior skill can do, what home technique can do. So obviously, these cards are super good fits for Gambit because they just enhance what he is already capable of doing, which is amazing, which leads to tremendous damage potential. And that is what gets me the most excited. Well, that sounds weird, but this is what gives me I can't even say the most pleasure because that still sounds weird. This is what makes Gambit fun. There you go. Is his incredible ability to dish out tons of damage. Now, not only like cards like 1 by 1 become like, oh, I'll deal 2 damage and 2 damage. No, I have 3 charge counters. Boom. Let's deal 5 damage and 5 damage. There's no other hero that can turn a 1-cost card into 10 damage aside from Ms. Marvel. She's the only one who can turn a 1-cost card into 10 damage aside from Gambit. So that is crazy. But Gambit can do it again almost immediately as much as he can charge the cards. I think for me, it's just insane. If you're building off of that, you can also build a no quarter deck with Gambit. You include those aggressive energies and warrior skills and home technique, and then Gambit turns into an aggressive monster. You put a couple of marks in there, so you're at least taking out a minion with overkill. So all that excess damage actually goes on the boss. But no quarter with Gambit, just imagine, let's just say you have the warrior skill and the aggressive energy. That's +2, so that's already 6 damage. You increase with the throw the card, goes to 9 damage. 10, 11, you can go up to 11. So that means if you're playing a full-on aggressive deck, and I would suggest if you build something like that, to include about 45 cards in your deck. Even if you need, go to 50. Add a couple of cards like follow-throughs to really take that up there. But just imagine you have the 3 follow-throughs, you are set up, and you're setting up fast because those no quarters, they're easy to pop off. And then you're doing 11, 12, 13 damage and overkill. You're discarding 12 cards from the top of your deck, putting every red card in your hand. That's insane. For a 2 cost, that's just insane value. And then all those red cards, you just like, okay, well, I'm going to play this, and this. And then all of a sudden, it might take a turn or 2 to make it happen. But oh my gosh, once it pops off really, really fast. And that's pretty much what I'm going to try to showcase in the deck strategy where I'm going to build. So cards like this, and then like Relentless Assault, again, you want to make sure that damage goes through. Cards like Melee. And in multiplayer games, man, you could be the aggressive thwarter with just into the phrase. Like just Gambits, charge the cards, stay in alter ego. I'll charge my cards, boom, and then you flip the hero form. Damn, I'll just remove 9 threat, 10 threat. I'm like, why not? Because I can. Using cards like this with Into the Fray makes Gambit aggression a very fun boy. Another strategy you could use if you prefer to stay in alter ego and use this is just build up team strike, right? So stay in alter ego a couple turns, use your Thief Extraordinaire, and then, you know, just build up the team strike team with the Wolverines and then the assault trainings to make sure that even if you lose the team strikes, which happened to me the first time I tried to showcase a deck like that, just cycle them through. So it just shows that, like, oh, these cards have just tremendous potential. And just seeing Wolverine team up with Gambit, so you got Wolverine, you got Colossus, all these big 3 damage guys. You put that boot camp in that type of deck, and then you're off to the races, right? You just keep removing threat and alter ego. Yeah, the villain's scheming a bit, but then you're just like, okay, well, I can still use my other characters to keep stabilizing threat, and then just kind of build my board state. And then, like, all right, let's go, villain. Where this kind of fails or could fall short is if you have a villain that kind of schemes a little bit faster than what you can do. So if you don't happen to be able to pop off those Creole Charmers to confuse the villains and really keep threat down, might be a situation that might cause some problems. But if not, then you're just laughing, right? So that's another strategy in aggression for our friend Remy Legault. So let's go check out. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of other strategies. There's a lot of X-Men strategy for Gambit. Unfortunately, his cards are very specific to what they do, so they don't really complement the aspect too much in aggression, except for, like, oh, I have a high defense, perfect, I'll block. So there's ways to build this whole, like, team strike deck super fast as well by not only sticking to hero form and alter ego, charging the cards. So there's ways to play it. It just depends, like, what scenario you're facing and how you're going to be approaching the villain and how patient you are, right? Like if you try to finish the game in 3 turns, go for the aggressive strategy. If you want to have a longer game of cat and mouse with the villain, we'll take the team strike strategy, you know, and like kind of just build up your board and take 5-6 turns to do what you want to do, or use the overkill kind of strategy with the no quarter decks and the extra damage, and then just kind of just like laugh when you have like 15 cards in hand. So again, all these strategies work really, really well. Gambit is a great character that complements the aggressive cards, but doesn't have a lot of cards that aggression can play off of, except for his unique hero ability. All right, let's move on to protection and see what we can come up with. All right, Gambit protection. Well, obviously, we're going to go off of the guild armor. That is the one card that synergizes amazingly with protection. That plus his stat line of 3 defense. Of course, the first thing you want to do is really pump that up and bring it up to 4, right? So all of these perfect defense strategies are just easy money when you're thinking about Gambit. You're putting the Unflappable, you're putting Electrostatic Armor, the Dauntless, the Unflappable, the Indomitable, the Hard to Ignores, the Flow Like Water, the Nerves of Steel. So you're adding all that, and basically 90% of your deck is already done. So, and then it's just like, what do I want to add? Well, aside from these support, like these awesome supports that really dilute your deck really fast, this is where you're like, all right, well, I do have my card that's super awesome. It's called Natural Agility. Well, that just makes me even better because it not only puts counters on me, charge counters, it lets me be a defensive machine, not only for maybe solo play, but also for multiplayer play. So Gambit, like a super defender, is amazeballs. So if you don't have your natural agility, well, you can include 2-3 copies of this expert defense, and then all of a sudden, well, dang, you have a defense of 6 or 7. You're not taking damage. You get to ready. to do it again for somebody else, then you use your natural agility, or then you use something else. And if you're like, well, okay, well, I don't have too many events, well, might not, this is where you want to include events like never back down, where you can actually defend for somebody without defending. So you're taking the first hit, you're going with the never back downs, you're increasing your defense to 5 off the chain right there. It's a defense of 5. It's hard to get through 5 defense. And then you can use also like desperate defense to actually give you more ready effects. So, and then you can just use your signature cards with the charge the card and throw the card effects to just deal the damage. So Gambit in protection is incredibly versatile. So he's got the offensive capabilities with his signature kit, and he's got the stats to stay alive, which is just so good. And then allies, 100% you want to include Jocasta to bring back those natural agilities to, you know, double up on those charge counters. And then Iceman is a great one for Gambit because, again, if there's too many minions, then he might kind of lose control. He might lose his focus. And then, so Iceman as an ally is, for a perfect defense strategy, is technically a no-brainer. And then obviously you can include like the, what's the elf there? Nightcrawlers and armors and all the other ones that have the tough status card. Just so it's a very easy generic build with Gambit, but it is extremely effective. Is there another strategy? Well, the thing is with Gambit, you know, you could play off those, again, stay in hero form. You could play off of these not todays, because those not todays are also really, really good. It's another +2 defense, and then you get to remove more threat. Because since you don't really want to go in alter ego, being able to remove the threat from other side schemes. So this is if you're playing, if you're playing in solo play, being able to use those not todays to remove threat from side schemes instead of just the main scheme, because you already have your never back downs. Is that the ones, never back down? Man, I can't, there's too many cards now, I forget. Or hard to ignores, they're right. Those hard to ignores, then those are removing threat from the main, and then you're just using that. And if you do need to go down, well, you can at least, you know, go down to alter ego, boom. You can use your Creole Charmer and then not even worry and still kind of build up your board real fast. So I think Gambit in Protection really has one of these cool strategies. Is there any way, other ways to build them in Protection? I was looking at the cards and I was like, aside from, you know, doing the defense for everyone, he's basically just, I want to block. My stats of my 1 thwart is not amazing. My 2 attack is just, it's okay, but my 3 defense is really my money, where my money stat is. So how do I abuse that? And I think, again, this is another perfect example where Gambit really enhances an aspect strategy rather than the aspect enhances Gambit's card. All right, well, Gambit in Justice does have a couple cards that synergize really, really well with the Justice aspect here, and that would be the Thieves Guild and the Creole Charmer, all and plus his alter ego ability. So all 3 of these effects let you remove threat in alter ego, which is crazy, crazy good. Now, the downside of doing a strategy in Justice like that in alter ego is you will not get the benefit from his throw the card ability, where you get to increase the damage by a lot. But you will be able to offer a game with 100% control, and then you'll be able to just try to find out where your damage is coming from. And I think that is going to be the hardest part. And I think when you play a strategy like Gambit like this, finding the damage is always what is going to be the hardest part to do. But here are some cards that synergize extremely well. The shield strategy with Remy LeBeau is extremely powerful. Cards like Global Logistics that let you manipulate the top deck and then use this Thief Extraordinaire. Like, what can go wrong? Cards like Breaking and Taking that lets you remove more threat. Cards like foil, that the villain is not stunned, he's not confused. At least you can really get rid of some of the stuff. And then just kind of go off of the vigilante trainings that you can recycle some of those really good, powerful cards in Justice. And then obviously cards like Homeland Intervention, if you're building a shield deck, it just makes so much sense. And then you can just kind of combo off everything here. Other great notes to put in is like cards like Operative Skills and Sense of Justice that just kind of work really well. Surveillance teams and field agents, you know, cheap cards to put on the table. The Quakes, the Monica Changs, the Agent Coulsons. Obviously, we've seen a shield strategy before, so there's nothing new here under the sun. And Gambit, all he does is he does it better than most other characters can do. Because most characters need the whole shield thing to set up. Remy can just do it on his own and not worry too much about setting up shield at the beginning for it to be able to work, right? He's got the cards to make it work straight off the bat. So that's why for me it is not my most exciting strategy. It's not the way that I like to play him. Again, Justice, there's so many other ways that you can explore Justice with Gambit, especially exploring the damage side of Gambit, which for me is a lot more exciting. All right, so before we go look into the damage, there's a little bit of a nombo here I'd just like to point out. If you're trying to play Turn the Tide after doing a Creole Charmer or your Thief Extraordinaire, it does not work because Turn the Tide has to be after your Hero Thwarts. And when you're doing these abilities, these are alter ego actions. But that being said, having fun with this, getting rid of this Turn the Tide, but having fun of, half the fun of Gambit is if you can get that Creole Charmer while you're in alter ego and confuse the villain and then flip up, then it's fun because then you can start abusing cards like Scare Tactics to deal more damage, and then like Swift Retribution, having the villain scheme and then increasing that damage, then flipping and playing Creole Charmer again. Again, this is what I like to see in Gambit, is like, oh, how can I play Justice in a different way? So increasing ways to deal damage for me against the villains is what I like the best. Obviously, the stealth strikes are amazing. Pivotal moments can be really clutch here too for up to 8 damage, as long as you keep that main clean. And then obviously concussive blows here from the Ms. Marvel pack that help with the confusion strategy, and then playing off these other cards as well. So for me, this is a lot more exciting to be more of a violent Justice player, and where you're actually not worried too much about threat removal, where you're still keeping control of threat in solo. And then obviously if you're playing multiplayer, I'd go for the shield strategy because it does remove a lot of threat. But if you're playing solo and you want to find a different way to play Justice where it's not the same old, definitely recommend trying including some of these cards in your deck strategy, and then using his charge the card and throw the card ability a lot more for maximum effectiveness. All right, well, if we're going to be Gambit in leadership, again, not too many crazy synergies within the aspect. I think Gambit is just fun on his own. He doesn't really need the aspect, so that's why he's very versatile and everything. You can just plug and play anything. But if we're going to go into a little bit of a theme strategy, I kind of like playing off of Rogue. I like the fact that I can just put some charge counters on my character and then just going to play her for free. And then kind of just abuse her over and over. Now, one thing I am going to say is if you're trying to, even if you have the 4 charge counters on Gambit, Rogue, if you try to play with Make the Call, oh, but I have 4 cars, so she costs only 1 less. It doesn't work like that. So because Make the Call says pay the printed cost and not the alternate cost. All right, so that's kind of like a nombo. So Make the Call with Rogue in the Gambit deck, even if you have the 4 charge counters, doesn't work. But what's cool is you can have cards like Get Ready. So even if she loses her tough over and over, you can have some fun, and you can kind of boost her stats. You know, with cards like R&D Facility. because that's until the end of the phase. So being able to ready her multiple times could be really fun, especially with like get readies or command teams. Using leadership skills, so then you're like, all right, I'm going to pump her up to a 3/3, and then I'll activate her 3 times, but I'll keep giving her the +1/+1 for those actions. So she'll be a 4/4, 4/4, 4/4. That's pretty fun. So you could kind of go to town and abuse with Rogue, and then you just keep recycling her or healing her to keep her there. And then you can also use cards like Pixie. So if ever you don't want to, inspire her and do the whole danger room training, game time thing with Rogue, which totally works. Game time with the danger room training on Rogue is something that can work really, really well. Again, so you have Pixie. Pixie works well because if ever she goes away, Pixie just brings her right back, and then you can abuse Pixie and Rogue, and then just kind of keep cycling those 2 cards. So Pixie goes away, she attacks, and then she goes here. You just don't play the X-Men that says they get +1 hit points, or else that's going to mess up your combo. So what's cool too is that even if you have the 4 charge counters here, even if you flip to Alter Ego, the charge counters do remain on your identity. So even in Alter Ego, Rogue's cost is still reduced, which is really fun when you can play with that. Also, having Beast being able to go get your molecular accelerations is a great way as well to keep up those charge counters. And again, just kind of play off some fun synergies here with the leadership aspect. Finally, some of the best basic cards to include in Gambit's decks are cards like Mutant Education. Again, anything that goes into the Alter Ego support strategy, like Weapon X, Moira McTaggart, X Mansion, X Gene, all those cards that are great cards to put down because Gambit will have easy access to those. And again, he has a lot of potential to flip down and to take advantage of all these triggers that normally most of the other X-Men kind of want to stay in hero form. But Gambit has that nice flexibility where he can kind of just go up and down as he wants. And so playing off of those, it's always really good as well for deck thinning Gambit's deck, because then you just want to see your royal flushes and your charge cards and your molecular accelerations and natural agility. So all your signature cards, again, he's got lots of events, and then you just want to see those events because they are just so good with Gambit that everything else is just like, how can I make my deck, smaller for me to take advantage of my hero cards? Again, cards like Def Focus and Endurance, and then even Beauty and the Thief if you're going to be playing off or keeping Rogue in play for a while, are just extra cards that just showcase how strong Gambit can be. All right, here's my conclusion for Gambit. So all around, Gambit is a fun character, got some fun shenanigan mechanics, but overall, even though he is one of my favorite X-Men in the comic books, in this game, I think he falls a little bit short, just because his hero kit, I feel like I don't have a lot to work with creatively. So is that a good? Is that bad? I think it's good because Gambit is so well designed that he stands on his own. It's bad as somebody who likes to create these original decks. I feel like I can't do much with Gambit that hasn't already been explored in some way or fashion. So, and again, you guys can leave me a comment. What do you guys think about it? What do you guys think about Gambit? Is there something unique that maybe I missed in that makes him something like special or stand out from the rest of the crowd? Again, does that mean I'm not going to play Gambit? Hells no. Gambit is super fun. But again, I feel like my Gambit experience is going to be very limited to, hopefully there's new cards that come out that I can really look to explore Gambit with a little bit more. Because again, like I said, Gambit has such a strong hero kit that the aspects don't really matter. So again, I think that's where creatively, I think he's challenged, but design, he's very strong. So again, it depends what you guys like in the game, and again, that's why you guys can share. So on that note, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I was able to inspire you in some way or fashion on some strategies, even though they're pretty common. And yeah, so keep on playing Marvel Champions. Remember to have some fun and just play the game. Ciao, ciao.